Hey, what's going on, y'all? This is LaToria, and we are here for the May episode of Soul Care Sessions. I got Miss Abdi Zelaya with me. Say hey to the people, Abdi.
Hello, everyone.
And we are going to be talking today about the power of forgiveness and release. In all transparency, this is something that I'm currently walking through myself, and I thought, what better topic to pull into the May episode and to kind of chat with Abby and tease out, because I'm sure that to some degree, some of the other women or young ladies that are listening to these conversations either currently are, will in the future, or just got through dealing with this topic. So before we get too deep into it, for the first time listeners, Abby, could you tell the folks who you are, what you do, a little bit about yourself?
Yes, absolutely. So I am Abdi Zelaya. I am an LPC associate, licensed professional counselor associate in the state of Texas. I am supervised by Tiffany Ashtonfelter. I'm a Christian therapist, EMDR trained therapist. I work with trauma, life issues, cultural issues. I'm also pursuing certification in Christian sex therapy. So I love to be able to just sit with clients and deal through all the hard stuff and work on that. So that's what I do.
Man, we thank God for you. You're doing important work. That is for sure. So
I'm
let's jump.
grateful I get to do that.
Yeah. I mean, sounds like you're in your lane, which is pretty cool. So we're just gonna kind of hop right in. Can you start off with giving us like a working definition of forgiveness, just off the
Yeah.
bat?
Yeah, I think if we were to simplify it, forgiveness is almost like an act of pardoning or extending mercy to someone of a wrongdoing that you've experienced, that you, kind of like being, I know I'm going to use this word victim, and sometimes people are like, oh, when you think about someone did something that victimized you, or it was a wrongdoing, that something that was done against you. According to the internet, it actually says the intentional and voluntary process by which one who may initially feel victimized undergoes a change in feelings and attitude regarding a given offense and overcomes negative emotions such as resentment and vengeance. Oh my goodness, I cannot speak. And that is what forgiveness is. So basically, to summarize it, when we think of forgiveness, it's something was done to me, and I am going to pardon or extend mercy to someone for that wrongdoing. That's how I see forgiveness.
Yeah, that makes total sense. So what about release? Like, how would you define that?
Yeah, I think when I think of forgiveness and releasing, even though they are two separate things, I think they're tied together a lot of times. Many times people will say, well, I forgive them, but we haven't released them. And with releasing is to set something free, to let go something that you're holding on to. If we were to hold our breath right now for 15 seconds and you're holding on to that, the moment that you have that release of breath and you're able to inhale and breathe normally, there's almost this weight that has been released or been taken off of your shoulder. So when you think of forgiveness and being able to let go of whatever offense, whatever emotional feelings and circumstances, activation, all the things that are associated with that forgiveness or that process of forgiveness that you're going through. So that's why I say I think they're tied and they're connected. I think you can forgive and not release. And I also think sometimes you can release, but really you haven't forgiven. So they go together, but they're separate, if that makes sense.
No, that makes total sense. It makes total sense. And it's crazy how tricky it can be to not, if you're not slowing down to really make a conscious decision to forgive that person, which I'll just be honest, from my own personal experience, can be really hard sometimes. You know what I mean? Depending on the offense or how it affected you. And just like knowing, even in my own personal journey, like, man, I've been carrying some stuff for like years. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've been carrying some stuff that like happened to me in like high school. And I think,
Yeah.
you know, we're taught, especially as women of color, get over it. You know, it's not that serious. It didn't hurt your feelings. Stop being so sensitive. You know what I mean? And it's
Mm-hmm.
just like for
Yeah.
me right now, that's one of my favorite things to tell people is like, I'm too sensitive for that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like allowing myself to be sensitive when I need to be, or
Yeah.
allowing myself to be weak, the weaker vessel. You know what I mean? When I need to be, because most of the time we're expected to just be strong all the time and carry all the weight of the world. And it's like, it's not good for us.
Yeah. I
You
think
know?
even validating that you are experiencing that. I also think a lot of times as, women of color, as individuals, as human beings, it's
Yeah.
hard to go through the process of forgiveness because it might feel like if I forgive, then that experience is over. That did not happen anymore, which it does not mean that it's over or it is removed. We can still validate that something happened to you or that a person did something, and not necessarily allowing, do you know what I'm saying? Like not allowing the forgiveness to happen because we don't want to invalidate that experience or what we feel.
I know exactly what you
And
mean.
yes, and I think sometimes we're afraid of, well, if I forgive this person for doing something, then that means that I have to forget or I have to, let go, and it takes away from my experience and being, I don't want to say victimized, but yeah, like
Yeah.
acknowledging that we are suffering and
Yeah. Or you are
we're
offended.
kind of,
There was an offense
yes,
against you. Yeah.
yeah. So I think forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to necessarily remove that or invalidate that experience. It just means healing from it or moving on, and being stronger in due time as we go through that
Yeah.
process. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that's such a good point that like forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to forget, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think that's particularly challenging when that person who did the offense against you didn't apologize. You know, like I've had some of those where it's just like they did what they did and there was never an apology, likely will never be an apology, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, man, so what would you say are like some of the effects of just continuing to not do the work and just walk with unforgiveness and just continue to
Yeah.
carry that with you?
Yeah. I mean, I see this almost every day as I'm doing work with clients. There are so many things that we hold on to. And I say we because I mean, I'm human too. And I go through this stuff too. And I'm like, oh, that hurt my feelings. And then you're
Yes.
kind of holding on to this baggage that really doesn't belong to you.
Mm,
Or it's not yours permanently, if that makes
yeah.
sense. I think some of the effects of unforgiveness, I like to use the analogy of a backpack. And sometimes with my younger clients, I'll have them carry a backpack full of bricks. And I'll say, like, sometimes the bricks in there, that full backpack could be the unforgiveness. How comfortable is that when you go to school, when you go to sleep, when you're trying to hang out with your friends, when you're trying to hang out with your family, and you're having to carry that really heavy backpack full of bricks? It's really uncomfortable and it gets in the way of life. And sometimes unforgiveness, if we allow it to kind of burden us or fill that backpack of our life, it's really hard to move on and do other things because we're holding on to it and we're not ready to let go, and it starts to affect our life, our day-to-day activities. I also think I've mentioned this in one of the other sessions that we've had with the book The Body Keeps the Score, and how a lot of unprocessed emotional experience, it starts to show up in your body, and sometimes you will have a physiological reaction with that unforgiveness. When I always remember my dad growing up, because he's a pastor and he'd always give all these sermon illustrations, and one that still sticks to me is he would, and I'm sure he got it somewhere else, so I can't quote the actual original author,
Yeah.
but he would say that unforgiveness is like you drinking poison and expecting that other person to be hurt or die. because you're the one that's being affected, and they're sleeping fine at night, but you're the one that's holding that unforgiveness. So it's a good reflection of, okay, that's not my responsibility to hold on to that. And we can tie it to, the Bible and how we have God and Jesus, and use that as an example of being able to forgive others, even though they may not deserve it. But we can extend that mercy to them, and, it might not change a lot, but allowing to kind of release that baggage that you're holding on to, because they're sleeping fine at night. You're the one that has that heavy backpack. So that's when I think of, the effects of unforgiveness, I just think of, I'm holding on to this heavy backpack that is affecting me in my life. And the other person, they're not holding on to anything. I'm the one that's holding on to that backpack because of them.
Yeah. Yeah, it's such a complex thing. It really is, So on the flip side of that, like, what would you say, or would you say it's probably pretty parallel, the effects of unforgiveness and the effects of not releasing, or
Yeah.
like, pretty parallel. So then what would you say are like some practical ways to enter into the process of forgiveness and then leading to releasing that person? Like, if someone's listening this and they're like, yes, and amen, I got some junk I need to get rid of. How do I do it?
Yeah. My first answer is always going to be talk to someone that can hold that space with you.
Yes.
Seek a professional, seek a counselor, a therapist, because we're trained to be able to walk with you through that process. And sometimes it might be way more complex than, checking off this little list. We have to consider trauma and like other things. And sometimes we might not be able to do that on our own. And having that support from a professional is very helpful. I think practicality, I think kind of what I mentioned earlier with sitting with the idea of, if I forgive and I release this person, the situation, it does not invalidate my experience of being hurt, of experiencing something that was done against me. I also think that sometimes a step that we could even take is forgiving ourselves, because it's many times we connect it with, oh, I'm so mad at myself because I could have done this to, eliminate this person from doing that to me. Or let's say that it was a traumatic experience. And many times, many victims of trauma or abuse, they blame themselves, like, oh, I should have dressed differently, or I shouldn't have been there. And you're blaming yourself, and we don't even realize I'm blaming myself, and maybe forgiving yourself, not because you did something, but allowing yourself to kind of have that release within yourself of, it was not my fault. And if there was something that I could have done, it's okay. And I forgive myself because it already happened, and moving forward. But for sure, I think my first thing would seek out some help, have a professional that is able and capable of walking through this healing, this forgiveness process, and giving yourself some grace, as it is a process. And even if you forgive a person, it doesn't mean that you're going to feel much better the next day. So it is a process.
Yeah. I mean, I totally can relate to that and to what you're saying, because I've found that, like, for me, with certain scenarios and situations, it's definitely like a detox, where it's like there's almost like a repetition of that process of acknowledging how the situation made me feel, forgiving, that person for the offense, and then releasing them, because I can, like, living my life and then something trigger, that thought or that trauma or that offense, or just the enemy, point blank period. I can do my own thing, and the enemy just, shoot a memory in my mind, and the temptation to grab back onto that thing and hold on to it and sit with that offense is definitely there. And so I think there are a lot of instances where it is important to understand that it's not necessarily a one and done. right? Where
Mhm.
you have to let yourself go through the process of continuously releasing and forgiving and
Yeah.
releasing that person,
Mhm. Yeah.
one of the
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that I like that analogy of kind of like a detox. It's not gonna go
Hmm.
away just in one sitting. It's a
Right.
process,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's gonna be uncomfortable. It's gonna be messy. All the things,
Hmm.
and sometimes you might need a professional or someone else to be able to walk you through that. Of hey, let's do this in a safe way.
Yeah.
So definitely giving yourself permission to do that. Of
Hmm.
okay, this is not safe for me to do on my own. I need to seek someone else to walk me, walk with me through this forgiveness and releasing process. So
Yeah. Absolutely, to what Abdi is saying. Like I have a counselor. So just for clarity's sake, I am not the professional doing my own mental and emotional help and practice, which, let's just be honest, unfortunately is still kind of taboo in you know, different cultures and with people of color, where we're expected to just somehow magically get over really traumatic things that happen, or
mm,
just really harsh things that happen that we didn't cause or deserve.
yeah.
What would you say that there are any like practical things that you could do physically for the release portion?
The first thing that comes into my mind is there's a thing called empty chair technique. I don't know if
Hmm.
you've heard of that, but and sometimes kind of thinking of you might not be able to get the closure that you are wanting
Yeah.
because either whatever circumstances, maybe the person will never be willing to apologize, or you have the space to safely confront a person that has hurt you or done something against you.
Mhm.
And we do this in session. I've seen, even some churches doing that as kind of like a healing and restoration. I thought it's great, where you kind of put an empty chair and you imagine the person sitting across
Wow.
from you, and you get to say how you feel, and even having that release of I'm able to express how I feel and how that hurt me.
Hmm.
um and even as believers, I would even say kind of like bringing it to God, and He's big enough to hold all of our emotions and all of our complaints, and
Yeah.
just saying like, hey God, this really is affecting me, like
Hmm.
and then just talking to Him. He's our best friend. We're able to do that. I think those are the two practical things. If it's something that you feel like you just need to release, and because you're holding on to it, and you just need that, maybe put a chair in front of you and pretend that person is right there. And what would you
Yeah.
say to them? It's more therapeutic when you have someone else that can kind of reflect and say like, okay, I wonder what that meant as you use this word and all the things. But I think that's a great way to at least have that release, that initial
Hmm.
release of, I know I'm not going to get this closure, and I want to be able to express how I feel um, to this person, given whatever situation.
Yeah. No, that's great advice. I'd never heard of that technique before, but
Mm-hmm.
that's great advice. Um, as we kind of come to a close, are there any resources, or like, books or podcasts or anything like that you would recommend just around this topic that um, would help the ladies that are
Mm-hmm.
listening?
Yeah. So there are two books that I will say I have not had the privilege or time to be able to read them. So this is just based on recommendations from other individuals that have read them. And one is a Christian author, and then the other one is secular. So it is Forgiving What You Can't Forget, and this is
Mm.
a book by Lysa Terkeurst. I can't pronounce, man, bilingual. ESL. That I always use that excuse, like my brain.
Ah.
So that's one of the books, and then the other one is Good Morning Monster, and it's a
Mm.
therapist that shares, these heroic stories of emotional recovery, and that one is by Catherine Gildiner, and I'm sure you're going to put it in the notes and all of that, and I'll send that to
Mm.
you. But I thought it was great to be able to even hear stories of other individuals that went through all of these experiences, and almost as as a way to have some hope of, okay, I can get through this as well. It's very encouraging to hear when other people are also going through similar situations and experiences. And even with that title of Good Morning Monster, a lot of times that unforgiveness can feel like a very big, scary thing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For sure. And I'm sure that a lot of times, myself included, like we can be afraid of what it's going to take for us to revisit that thing fully and to walk back through what happened, exactly, and how it made us feel then, how makes us feel now. Will I recover from all of this in time to be okay to go back to work? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
or if you're a parent, you have kids, or just other responsibilities, a partner or a spouse or whatever, and it's just like, how long am I going to be like out of commission dealing with? But it's so worth it to set yourself up and set your people up around you to be like, hey, I might need a few days, or a month, or
Yeah.
however long it takes, because you're worth that. You're worth doing the work. I'll share something that a friend recently told me. She just was like, hey, you need to understand that this work that you're doing is an element of fighting for your life, because it's going to affect you in some way, the trajectory of your life, mentally, emotionally, the decisions that you make going forward. If you don't take the time to really stop and do the work and heal and get on the other side of this, it's going to affect your life. And you have to choose whether or not you're going to fight for it or just brush it under the rug and keep carrying that backpack. As you said, like backpack full of bricks. She didn't say that, but I'm just tying in your analogy because in essence, that's what she was saying,
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. Sometimes we forget and we take care of all these other areas of our life, whether it's, physical and health, but your mental health, we're like, oh, well, I'll just, I'll suck it up. That's fine. Just brush it off. I'll be okay. But no. And using that same brick analogy, it's really uncomfortable to sleep with a backpack full of bricks. It's really uncomfortable to enjoy parties with your family, with your friends, with a backpack full of bricks.
Right.
Like that is heavy. That's really uncomfortable. And I know when I want to go have fun with my friends, I don't want to be lugging around this backpack. I want to be able to, get rid of it. So thinking of it as that way, like you can keep carrying it if you want, but at one point you're going to get really sick and tired of it, and it's going to affect a lot more things.
So true. That's so true. Well, Abdi, thank you so much just for spending some time with us to talk through this this topic. I think it's a really important one. If there's someone that's listening that wants to follow you or keep up with what you're doing, or maybe even set up, a session to have you be the person that helps them walk through, the things that they need to forgive and release, how can they be in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can follow me. I'm on Instagram. It's Therapy by Abdi. I do have links on there for our website for our practice, and you can just follow that. Go to aspenhouseassociates.com if you want to do free phone consultations and kind of get started with that whole process. So if that's something that someone is looking for, just reach out and I'll try to connect you and start that process. I know it can be very scary and intimidating, but you are so worth doing the hard things. Do it for yourself. Do it for your future self.
Yes. So. She will thank you. Your future self will thank you, and you'll be so glad that you did it. And Abdi, I think that she's a safe space. I know a lot of times, and I've had some experiences where you go to a counselor and you kind of open up and give some really vulnerable things, and they mishandle you. You know what I mean? And I think that that's unfortunate, because a lot of times people are like, yep, that's it. I'm not ever doing that again, because it's too risky, especially when they just kind of mishandle you and then you pay them for that. But I can tell that you are a safe space, and that you handle people's hearts and minds and just their the things that they are walking through, their scenarios and situations, with care. So I encourage you guys, if you're thinking about it, here's that gentle nudge. Just jump out there by faith and give it a try. You're worth that. And it may be against everything that you believe or are used to believing and all of those things. But um, I think that this is a common grace. Like she said in several past episodes, like in the same way that you would take some Tylenol if you had a headache or a knee ache, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or you would aid any other, ailment with some sort of remedy. This is the same thing, but it's for your heart and your mind
Yeah.
and your soul. So
Mhm.
please take it seriously. We are here to serve you. These conversations are brought to you by FCA. I will put all of the resources and contact information for Abdi down in the link as always. But if you have thoughts, comments, questions, frustrations, prayer requests, any of that good stuff, please feel free to reach out to me. You can email me at latoriawilson@fca.org. I look forward to hearing from you. So until the next conversation, we're going to say bye for now.
Right. Bye.